voice.
With the unmistakable tagline, ladies and gentlemen, and this is a Jazzy Pha product shizzle, Jazzy Pha has been in the industry since 1988, having worked with a litany of artists, the who's who of hip hop and R&B. And I'll say that it is, as a singer myself, it is a pleasure to sit next to what I consider to be a music legend. How you doing, sir?
Thank you, my brother. Thank you,
welcome. You're welcome. I appreciate it.
Yes,
I felt, I can't see, but I felt your honor.
That's why I touched you.
Yeah, you did the right thing.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for joining us. This is the Jenleeion Circle, right? And it's the interview circle that we do with Jenleeion magazine. And like I said, this is a pleasure to be able to sit down with you. And I want to first go back to the beginning, right? Because I think you have a very interesting story, right?
Okay.
So I'll call it the road to becoming Jazzy Pha. Right. There's Phelan Alexander, but the road to be, and I want to get into that as well. Yeah, but the road to becoming Jazzy Pha. Let's first talk about your father and how that music bug was passed down to you.
Okay, man. Just being on the road with, the Barcades, my dad and the Barcades, they would take me on the road, when if I got good grades in school. So, because most of the tours were in summer. We're doing the summer, so I would be able to go on the road with him, and I'd have little, jobs and on the side of the stage, bringing towels out to the guys and drinks and whatever, and
PA stuff.
Yeah, man, just learning the ropes though, and sitting in the studio while they're recording the hits, and man, I started kind of like. At an early age, kind of touching knobs, and they was like, okay, back then they didn't have automation. So like if we want to fade a record out, it might need 2 or 3 people to fade all the faders down. So it's like, okay, you want to work the faders? Okay, you bet. You know what I'm saying?
You just click something in Pro Tools or Reason and have it happen right away.
Yeah, so I was touching the big boards at an early age, man, and it just caught on. I mean, it was just inevitable. I knew exactly what I wanted to do before I graduated.
Well, now, was there a time where your grades weren't right and your dad said, no, you can't go, and it bothered you?
Nah, I was on the borderline. I would always get right there, and that was always the threat. That was the thing that kind of put me back in line. I think that's what straightened me out. That's what really, helped me in the road, the music.
And of course, there's several facets to music, right? You just talked about your introduction to the studio experience, but you can sing.
A little bit.
I think so. You can.
I've been practicing, man. I'll be at home practicing because, like I would always hit flat notes, like when I was singing in the choir, and I go back and my choir director would record us, and I would listen. I'd be like, eh. So I said, man, let me, over the years, I just kind of practiced my tone. I listened to people like Luther and Babyface, people that just had great tone. You know what I'm saying? Even Patti LaBelle and, Al Green. These people just had such great tone. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and likewise, your mother was also into music.
Yes.
And the reason why I talk about your parents first is because I love it. I love the story when, there's a certain thing that the parents are into, and then the posterity can't help but be bitten by the same bug, right? Talk to me about your mother who worked with greats.
Oh yeah, man. My mom was like, my mom and dad separated from Memphis. We were living in Memphis. When they separated, I was like 5 years old, 4, maybe going on 5. And we moved to California. So we moved to California. She was working with a guy by the name of DJ Rogers. Also working with Philip Bailey from Earth, Wind & Fire. And then Living Epistles, work with people like the Gap Band, Barbra Streisand. There's a lot of big names doing background work. And so she was, she would, work with them for lengths of time. So we were moving all over California. So I went to probably about 13 different schools in my life. So I went to schools where there were no black kids. So, I mean, but the good thing about that was, it was kind of like when in Rome, like these kids are putting me on and stuff like, like Toto and Phil Collins and, AC/DC and Queen. You know what I'm saying? All of these different groups that just put me in a different,
and
zone.
Birth music's versatility, right?
Yeah, they gave me that. And then my mom being on the gospel side heavily, You know, she sang in gospel groups too. Like with Philip Bailey, that was the Living Epistles. That was his gospel side.
Yeah.
So, you know, he was a believer. So, you know, he was, you know, they had us around all these great people, Billy Preston, Andre Crouch, Hezekiah Walker, all of those guys, Daryl Coley. You know, we were working closely with all those guys.
Wow.
Legends, man.
Wow. And so take me to the story of you finally at least being discovered, to where you started to cross that bridge to becoming the producer Jazzy Faye, because that's the part that I think is extremely exciting.
Well, becoming the producer Jazzy Faye came from a failed attempt at being Jazzy Faye the artist. Well, actually Phelan the artist.
With you being signed in 1990, correct?
At Electric Records.
Yes. At
Electric Records, and we had a CEO by the name of Bob Krasnow. He was an older Jewish guy, and he was sick, and we didn't really know that, and he passed away. And when he passed away, like anybody, I had only one single out, and I was just brand new artist, like probably not even 6 months old, you know, on a label. So Keith Sweat was there, I think, at the time. In Touch was there at the time. Some older groups, and everything that was gold or under got dropped.
Wow.
Got dropped off the label. So I got dropped off the label. So living back in Memphis and getting dropped off of a label, it's kind of like you failed, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But it's interesting to me because your single hadn't even been given that much time to live.
No,
it did. It
didn't. But you know, when you in a town like Memphis, who had like not a lot of guys, I was like the only kid literally in Memphis, you know, to have a major deal. And for everybody to look at me like, oh, he gonna win because you know his daddy, he got a silver spoon in his mouth or whatever, and everybody felt like that, but it wasn't like that. My dad didn't give us everything, and it was like, you know, he made me work for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So coming from there, not to interrupt you, but coming from there, like I went to producing. That's when I started making beats.
Wow. So is at the point that you became Jazzy Faye the artist, did you already know how to sort of write beats, or is that something that you fell into afterwards?
I think I kind of acquired them all simultaneously. You know, because when you're working on an album, you're doing them all. But I didn't know that I was producing.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't programming. I wasn't touching the machines like that. I had a bunch of guys around me programming. But for me to lose my deal, I realized that these guys were only around for the check. See, I wasn't handling the business at the time. I was just making the music. I was making the music, so I'm like, why come ain't nobody coming to the studio? Because we had our own studio. And then my guy, this guy named Mike Patterson, little white kid, he said, ma'am, that's because everybody was here for the check. But guess what? You've been producing these records all along. He said, you've been producing these records. You should hear these guys' music without you. He said, you've been producing the records. All you got to do is get on this machine. And I got on the MPC 3000 Akai, the Roger Lynn machine. You know, and man, one beat turned into $100, next beat $500, and it just kept on going.
This story is important because we speak to a lot of dream chasers in our audience, right? So just to go back a bit, obviously anyone would feel crushed losing like a major deal. It's like the biggest carrot.
It was hard, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the biggest carrot dangled in your face, and it's, where do I go next? Okay, getting to the point where you could believe in yourself, to have. You said that was a friend that encouraged you, but getting to the point where you had the nerve to even keep going, what was that for you?
I think, you know, the music keeps me going. It was the just being around it. I was so close to it. I mean, I couldn't help but keep going. I mean, I would still be on the road with my dad. I would still be out, and like, everybody knew us in the town. So anybody who came to the Mid-South Coliseum in Memphis or even in California, I would go up and I just walk. It was something about the way that I carried myself even back then, my style and everything. I would walk up to backstages and just walk right through.
Wow.
Anything, everything. So I was just a fly on the wall the whole time.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about your discography and some of the people you work with, but again, that name, Jazzy Pha. In 1967, the Bar-Kays band was killed in a plane crash. Incidentally, Jazzy Pha's father was not on the plane because he was chosen to be the designee to ride on a commercial flight. Otis Redding was also on the plane. With that story, your name came.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Phelan Jones. Phelan Jones was my dad and my mom's best friend. They were like, he was like the glue to the relationship. You know, the go-between, the brother, like, you know, that they always, you know, needed. And when he passed, that was heavy on my dad. You know, everybody, you know, especially with Otis as well, but especially Phelan. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He was his best friend. So he named me Phelan. He named me Phelan. And it's crazy because Ben Carley, who was actually a sole survivor of the plane crash, named his son Phelan as well. Everybody loved Phelan. You know what I'm saying? So, you know.
So he definitely had an effect on
you. Yeah, every time I would see Uncle Ben, he'd be like, Phelan. He'd just say my name over and over again. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so did you hear any stories about how much the game changed at that point? Because the Bar-Kays was the house band for Stax Records, right?
Oh, of course. I mean, even since I've been in the game. I mean, because pretty much I came in the game when, you know, they had the same criteria, you know, then is when I got in the game, because it was like the Apex tape, the you know, the bouncing to a half inch from a 2 inch, you know what I mean? And all of this.
Look, I'm spoiled with the millennial generation, so I'm serious. Walk this technology with me.
It's a lot.
Technology with me.
It's a lot. You know, a 2 inch tape. You know, an Apex tape. You know, these big reel-to-reels. You know what I mean? They're huge. You can only get like 2 songs on them. You know what I mean? 3 if you make it short records, but for the most part, sometimes 1 song. And these guys would literally splice the tape sometimes to cut the record because it was all there. I mean, you had
was literal mechanics for everything.
Yes,
My goodness. And so you told a story about what it was like having to slow a record down to get the high pitched sound.
You heard about that?
Yeah, I want you to tell me more about it though.
Well, we were in the studio with George Clinton. George Clinton, and he was doing all these crazy things. He was like, okay, take the reels and turn them upside down. We were like, turn them upside down. So it's like, okay, you got 2 reels spinning around with a tape in between, and you take them and turn them around, and the record plays backwards. So he would go in there and make it go backwards, and then he said, okay, now slow it down. Slow it down. So all the music's going, and he just started singing in his regular voice. And when he played it back, like say for instance, you slow the record down, and then that's how he got that, Roddy said it come alive, I'm never up and down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's because he slowed the record down. They didn't have that technology back then, so Prince would slow the record down and then speed it back up and push play.
Wow.
And thus, Andre 3000 does it.
Yeah, and then Missy did it.
Yeah.
You know, people actually thought your equipment that was laying yet was actually some kind of language, but
it was backwards.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
So having to make that switch from what I would call the vintage way of doing things to now everything is digital. You can cheat, you can just click a mouse and make amazing stuff happen. Some of the software is a bit sophisticated, even though you can do that. But how was that switch for you? Or were you so thirsty that it was anything it takes to keep it going? I
mean, it was so gradual, and being around people who, you know, always being around people who are willing to learn and you know, quirky little guys in the studio. I was always around them. So it's almost like it came natural to learn a piece of equipment. And it's like, you know, once we went and bought it, it's like, you know, that was their job to learn it, you know, or else we're going to find somebody else and you ain't going to have a job. So you got to learn it. It's almost like, you know, it's something that you got to do.
Wow, fantastic. Jazzy is the founder and CEO of Show Enough Records, the record label that signed Sierra. Let's talk about that. You know, I think that's first of all,
CC.
I love CC.
Yeah.
You know,
don't we all?
Every time I think of her, I hear Ludacris saying, "CC better CC me."
Yeah, CC better CC me. Yeah.
Exactly.
She cold, man. She was just, I mean, from the beginning, she was in a group called Hearsay, 3-girl group. Basically, long story short, one of my guys had told me, like, man, look, pick out the one that you think is the hottest. He knew which one was, and they performed. I was like, she's a star. He's like, that's what I said. He says, right, and that's my girl. You know what I'm saying? And he was like, man, listen, I want you to take her and groom her and make her something, make her a star. You know what I'm saying? So we sat down. We kicked it. We went over to Dallas Austin's studio. I was working there at the time. And so Dallas gave me like this little room over there in the corner, little cubby hole. And I loved it though. I loved this room. It was like, just had such a vibe to it. And me and Jonte Austin, we sat up in that room and we just, you know, we vibed it out. I believe like I let CC hang around at the studio probably 3 days, just hanging out in the lobby and just dancing and bouncing. I'm like, hey man, listen. She was like 17 years old at the time. She was barely 17, as a matter of fact. She just turned 17. And I was like, y'all can't be looking at her like, you know what I mean? Because the way she danced so sexy. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, bro.
And then Goodies is her first single?
I had to jump out and tell everybody, man, yo, you can't be looking at her like that. You know, so she's 17 years old. I think Bow Wow started hanging around the studio around that time, trying to see what was going on. You know what I mean? I think after the Goodies single he saw on MTV, it was you know, obvious. I mean, but the first 3 records that we recorded, I think, you know, were all on the album. I think the first record we did was like Thug Style. So I mean, you know. Yeah, it was a magical moment for her and me.
Yeah, it's hugely magical, especially if you have a hunch about something, right? And a hunch is a hunch, but hunches don't always come reality. But this felt like more than a hunch for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was my first artist, and you know, it just felt so right. You know what I mean? It was, and she was young, she was new, she was willing to learn, she was ambitious. She had a vision, you know, of her own as well. You know, as mine. You know, when we put them together, it's just magic.
Yeah. How do you feel about the industry today? It's changed.
It's interesting. I think it's hard, but it's fair.
Well, you got to describe that.
So because it's like when the game like there's levels to the game. Like when you're playing Super Mario, it just goes to other levels. Like the level of difficulty is at an all-time high right now. You know, because it's like you got 100,000 rappers trying to get into one space.
Yeah.
R&B, same thing. You know, now R&B is coming back.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
thanks to Bruno Mars. I mean,
yes. Right. I mean, yeah. You know, and Bruno's doing a great job at it.
He brought that 90s sound back.
In a soulful way.
Yeah, and I was waiting for that, though. Yeah. Not from him, but it worked.
Hey, man, listen, as long as it come on.
Yeah.
We need that. We need that. You know what I'm saying? So,
but you were describing the levels, guys.
I feel good. I feel good about it. It takes adjusting. And with me, I ain't cry about it. I just said I had to get down and get in there and figure out what was going on. Thus, you know, people like Ayo and Teo. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, so you get Ayo and Teo with Rolly Rolly, and we did 2.5 billion streams.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With a song that I wrote. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was a lot. I mean, you can't even go to a kid party without hearing that record.
Yeah, we interviewed a member of Tony, and he said something about the streaming experience, right? He felt that it was hard to make music, it's hard to make money in music because of the streaming experience. Everyone doesn't believe that. What do you believe?
I believe it's hard, but you have to know, not impossible. You have to know, sometimes you just gotta switch it up. You gotta switch it up, and it's all about you being acclimated to, you know, what's going on. You know, because sometimes you can, like, because the guys in Tony are lean heavy on the soul side. You know what I mean? So, and I'm a fan as well.
Yeah.
But you know, myself, I was always leaning towards the youth.
Of course.
You know what I mean? I want to know what makes
the relevancy.
Yeah, because when you think about dance, when you think about Sierra, who knows all the dances? The kids. So you got to have, you know, you got to know what the kids are doing.
You know what? It's funny you say that, because even Michael Jackson, who was the best dancer, right?
He leaned towards the kids.
He said he got everything that he learned from the kids in the street.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, pop locker from Jeffrey Daniels, the Pop Along Kid. He was called the Pop Along Kid. He used to pop lock in LA all the time. And then of course, people like Fred Astaire and people like that, watching those moves and putting them all together.
You've worked with a lot of artists, right? A lot of them, right? I'd like to, again, because I love excitement moments, the artist that you got that call or you got that deal and said, wow, I'm going to be producing for X. Who was that?
I think it was Aaliyah.
Wow.
It was Aaliyah because I was such I was a great fan of Missy and Timberland's work.
Yeah.
Especially Timberland. And then later I got into Missy more because then I realized exactly what she was doing.
Yeah, she's the only one that can get away with all those weird sounds in the background, and we all love it.
Right. I was appreciating her as an artist, but I was seeing Tim, because I was a producer, so I was seeing that image that he was definitely an inspiration.
Wow. Yeah, Missy Elliott and Timberland were definitely, they were the reasons why I one of the big reasons in the 90s why I started wanting to learn music and how to produce.
Yeah, I call her my little superhero every time I see her. She's my little superhero. She gave me my first Super Smash.
Wow.
Yeah.
1-2 step?
Yes, sir. She sent me that joint and I was like, oh my God.
Wow. Yeah, that it's funny because every time I think of you and a lot of people, that bass line in it, ladies and gentlemen, that's the first thing.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. You got to do it again. Do it again.
Ladies and gentlemen.
now say the Jazzy Fizzle product shizzle because I got to hear them say.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a Jazzy Fizzle product shizzle.
Now say on Jenleeion zizzle.
Or Jenleeion zizzle.
That is super awesome. So, outside of that, the songs that you've produced, that you've written, what is your favorite one? Or do you have one?
No.
Too many?
I don't have a favorite song I produce. It's impossible.
One that was really a transcendent moment for you, or was it working with Aaliyah?
That working with Aaliyah. What was fun was working with CeeLo.
CeeLo Green.
Yes. Yeah, working with CeeLo. When we did Let's Go Have Some Drinks. Happy Hour was the song.
Yeah.
But everybody calls it Let's Go Have Some Drinks. But
So a little bit ago, we talked about I'll call it artist development and the experience you went through with Sierra, and that was successful. And then later on, you mentioned that obviously you do have 100,000, albeit it's probably several million of rappers trying to be in the same space, and singers trying to be. Everybody wants to be a star, right?
Of course.
What do you have in terms of advice for the thirsty star out there, considering that you do have clout to say it because you've developed an artist before?
Well, you have to go and watch the greats. Learn from the greats. Learn from the Michael Jacksons, the Janet Jacksons, the Mariah Careys, the Whitney Houstons, the Patti LaBelle's, the even Luther Vandross, all the superstars. You know what I mean? Even over on the pop side, even the Nicki Minaj, the greats. Just learn from the greats, the ones that are really making a difference, the ones that are really putting what we say asses in the seats. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the ones that move the needle, the ones that people aspire to be. Like if you go and it's Halloween and somebody dresses up like you, then that's somebody that's going into right direction.
Wow. Yeah, because I'll tell you, in this world where it seems that in order to become successful that you need a viral moment, right? And it's difficult for people to get that viral moment, especially in this world of streams, etc.
Yeah.
What keeps you inspired, Jazzy?
I think family, God, music, of course. Just really, I got such a praying mother. And
do you know the gospel song where the lady goes, "But I had a praying grandmother.
Oh, absolutely.
She taught me how to call on the name." That's what they think of. Yeah. But go ahead. You said your mother was
she just had so much to give as far as like anything. I can call her, and she can just tell from the tone of my voice. Especially now we got FaceTime. She knows, boy. She knows what to say. She knows what to say, and she knows what to pray about. And I know I can feel. It's crazy because I can hang up the phone and feel her interceding from her side.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? That's how well we are connected. So it's a different kind of connection when you talk about us two. So that was one of the things that just really kept me rooted. We were so tight. You know, she had me on her hip from the beginning. So, you know, we inseparable.
So I trust that your faith is what has kept you sane in the ugly that exists in the industry as well, because it's there.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I got good friends like Vaughn, like you know, you just have to have people around you that keep you motivated. You know, keep you motivated. Because sometimes I get up and I want to quit, and sometimes I'll be like, I don't want to be Jazzy Faye, but then I'll be like, you know what I mean? Because sometimes you don't want people to recognize you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
You got Kanye wearing a black mask over his face. Sometimes the fame is just too much to deal with when you got human things that you got going on and everybody's seeing you as this, you know, this icon or whatever.
You're not always feeling like.
No, you don't always want to be the icon when you're picking out pears and peaches. You know what I'm saying?
So what do you do when the sunlight's in your face and you want to block it out? What do you do?
Well, I think there's a thing that you kind of you put together, you know, kind of like maybe like indirectly or subconsciously, if you will, that you know you just have to be like ready for people. You just got to be ready for people. When you get ready to walk out the house, you have to be ready for people. You got to be ready to receive. And now I always say, you know, even on Instagram sometimes I always say I have to walk out with my hands open. I can't ball my fist up. I got to be ready to receive. I got to be ready to receive. So I'll always tell myself that just to keep my mind in that vein. You know what I mean? So I don't, you know, treat people rude, or I'm always kind. You know what I mean? Even if I'm not feeling my greatest.
Consistent with your faith?
Yeah.
What's your go-to gospel song?
My go-to gospel song?
Yes.
Probably Fred Hammond, No Weapon.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a real good one.
Oh yeah.
That's one of the ones that I go to.
Okay.
And sometimes I go to In the Midst of It All by Yolanda Adams. Sometimes that's a massive reset. And that's another thing that I love and find so inspiring about you, is that your faith is, regardless of genre, regardless of industry, regardless of circumstance, that the fact that is something that is you know, in front of you, no matter what you do. So with that being said, you guys were on the road a lot, but on most Sundays were you in church? Or was it just sort of bread from home? A
lot of Sundays. When I was with my mom, I was there on Sundays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, you know what I mean? But joyfully. I mean, I went to a church in the Inland Empire in California that was like, I mean, one of the most amazing churches. I think it's really called Loveland. And they really were the first to really kind of have a youth ministry that really just didn't discriminate against the children that were at the, you know, at the church. Like, we were rapping. Me and my brother were gospel rappers.
Then?
You know, yes.
Wow.
Before anybody had a gospel record out.
Wow.
We were gospel rappers at our church. Commission came to our church, and Fred Hammond and them took us as kids. I was probably about 15. My brother was about 16. They were late. They were performing at our church. We had speakers all through the church, even in the dressing room. We were performing on the stage. When we performed on the stage, we were called the Church's Three. Me, my brother, and Jesus. We had a third member, but he got out. So we made Jesus our third member. We was like, we ain't changing the name. We starting to pop around the town. So we go, you know what I mean? The other cat, he got scared when he found out it was for real. You know what I'm saying? He thought we were gonna do it for one Sunday and wear these fake chains, and you know what I mean?
Oh, that's hilarious.
But we were called the Church's Three, and we performed, and we would each beatbox for each other. Me and my brother, great beatboxers. So we get that microphone, and our church had a great system. Man, we went stupid. And we had that church upside down. Fred Hammond heard us in the dressing room. Commission is supposed to be like, you know, they're supposed to come out, you don't have this great interest. They were all in the vestibule, pinned against the glass, looking at us perform.
Wow.
And it was like, who is that?
Wow.
And the next night, they took us from the Inland Empire down to Hollywood at the Roxy and had us open up for their show. And they wanted us to go on tour with them, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that went on. There was a contract involved. My mom said no. So
yeah, that's incredible though. But
it wasn't time.
So you guys supposed to be 3 people. Did you guys always explain that when you started, or did you just go on and some people?
It just happens sometimes.
Where's the third boy at? I
Right.
want to see 2 people.
Always. When we do little interviews, we would do it.
Oh God, that's hilarious. So with Show Enough Records, are you still scouting and signing artists, or are you just on the producer side right now?
Just pretty much on the producer side.
Fantastic.
But if I find something, then it's on.
Hey.
It's always on. We can strike up a band anytime.
There's always possibilities.
Yeah, we fire up the jets, baby.
Well, if anyone doesn't know where to follow you, Jazzy, where can they follow you?
Follow me on Instagram, Jazze Pha, JAZZEPHA.
Anything else that you'd like to say as final words to the dream chasers out there?
Man, just stay focused. Be different. Don't be afraid. Be brave. Go and do what hasn't been done. It doesn't matter. Just like you see bell bottoms come back in style. You see, then it's like straight legs. Now you got some people wearing straight legs, some people wearing bell bottoms. It's confusing. So you do exactly what you feel. Be a trendsetter. Set the trend. And if it's loud enough, people gonna hear it. People gonna see it. People gonna be it. People gonna want to try to be it. They want to be around it. So just be infectious. Be great.
And to stamp that with ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's yours truly, Jazzy Fizzle, a.k.a. Fenzel Burgundy, Obama Luther King Jr. Jackson 5 the first. Oh boy.
Jazzy Pha is also gracing the Jenleeion cover and will have a billboard running in New York. So please go to Jenleeion.com and our social media pages to check that out. It has been a pleasure. I'll tell you to sit here with a legend like
Likewise,
you.
brother. Great interviewer.
Look, I'm telling you, I put you in this same category. I was obsessed with Timberland when I was a kid. I used to tell people to call me Junior Timberland.
Wow.
So the likes, you're up there in terms of the talent, the grit, all that stuff, right with them, the Jermaine Dupri's, the Timberlands, and all that stuff, and then your humility is infectious. So
man.
That's
it's a blessing.
That's refreshing.
That's a blessing.
All right, everybody, I'm Mario Bonds. See you next time.
Does anyone still believe in paradise?